Welcome to Indie Creator Exchange 25. And today, Jake and I are interviewing Alex Turbin. Alex, how are you doing this fine morning?
I'm doing fantastic. Talking about comics, how can I not be?
Oh, it doesn't get any better than that. But we have been really enamored with your YouTube channel, but even more importantly, your comics.
Hmm.
We did a Three Men and a Comics episode with Dan Snook, who does the Rave Sensation channel.
Right.
And he was the one that actually suggested you as, or your work as well as the topic. And man, we had, I think it was close to 101 questions, right, Jake?
Yeah, we could always come up with more though.
I'm always ready to talk. Like I said, talk about comics all day long.
Cool, cool. Jake, do you want to start us off with some of those questions?
Yeah, well, we usually try to understand who we're talking to. So
Right.
why don't you tell all these fine feathered people out here, how you got off the ground? Um, the you have the comics that you've been making for a while,
Yep.
and then you also have the podcast. But take us back to the humble beginnings and influences, inspirations. Give us your mini bio.
Right. Well, I'm from Bangor, Maine, and uh, I've always wanted to be a comic book artist. And so even at the late age of 52, I'm still trying to break into the industry, which it's a long road to hoe, I guess. But I went to the Joe Kubert School for comic book and graphic art, and uh, I went there for a year, and I only because it's a 3 year program. I don't know if it still is, but at the time it was a three individual year, so you could go 1 year, get a certificate, go a second year, get a certificate, go a third year and get a certificate, and I was seeing that they had like a 99% job placement after you're done with the course. But what they don't say is that, or what they didn't say was that they also had like a 85, 95% dropout rate after the first year. I think it's probably people either flame out or they actually get a job at the time before they're actually done
Mm.
their course. Um, so then I dropped out, thinking that I could break into the indie comic scene, and also for the best reason and worst reason, a girl. Um, so I just came home to Bangor, Maine, and I thought I could just, do my thing and break in. And I was, full of youthful vigor. But then that didn't really happen. So with other publishers, I mean, I had a little bit of success. I submitted to a few places and indie places and got accepted, but then they didn't pay or didn't produce it or whatever. And so I was
Yeah.
just like, I'll do my own comic. And so I put an ad in the paper looking for other artists and writers, and we got together, and there was like 12 of us or so, and we didn't uh like you get that many people in a room, and everybody wanted to do their own thing. They wanted to be the boss, or they wanted to do whatever, and it just kind of was like a big jumble. I kind of liken it to the Watchmen scene where the Minutemen are in that meeting and they're all kind of talking about different things, and the comedian burns the map up. It was kind of like that in my imagination. But we got done with that, and a couple of guys came to me and they were like, "Well, we've got this project that we'd like to do, and we thought you'd be good as a penciler for it." So then we came up with this Mutandis #1,
Oh,
and
wow, yeah.
that's pretty much what I'm mostly known for, is the Mutandis stuff, and that's from the Power Comics, because I was on their show, and yep, you have that's issue number 5, but it's really #1. But we can get back to that. So then we produced like 4 issues. This is #2, and then #3. which has another story to it, because we actually did go through a different publisher, but then they stopped taking our calls and stuff like that. And so then after that, we I don't have the you have the random accesses. Um, we Bill and I, because it was me, Dave Worcester, who was the writer, and Bill Renfro, who was the inker, and Bill and I were getting a little tired of just doing the Mutandis, so we were deciding to break up the Mutandis into three different stories. One, we would continue the Mutandis, and two and three would be Bill and I's story. So we did 2 issues of that, and then we just, through creative differences or whatnot, we actually didn't have creative differences really that much. We just kind of just all went our separate ways. So that's basically how Random Access 1 and 2 came along. But then
Right. So yeah, go ahead.
flash forward 32 years or 31 years, whatever, during the COVID pandemic, people were really getting into comics and stuff. And I got a message saying, are you one of the guys that did Mutandis? And this just came out of the blue. You know, I hadn't thought about Mutandis or Random Access in 30 years. And so I was like, this is awesome. Marvel's contacting me. I'm going to get a bunch of money for Mutandis. This is the greatest thing ever. But it was instead, it was the Power Comics guys just wanting to contact me about getting more issues and learning more about Mutandis. Um, but I mean, that was just as well, because I was at that point, I wasn't going to quit comics, because I'll do comics, you know, for the rest of my life. If I'll be Charles Schultz, you know, with the wiggly hand, as long as I live. Um, you know, if nobody's buying them, nobody's looking at them, I don't care. I'm still going to make them. But I was
Hey,
actually going into a new thing where I was going to do digital sculpting, and I was learning how to 3D print and 3D sculpt and all this kind of stuff. Um, so the Power Comics actually brought me back to my real true love, which is comics, instead of the that other stuff, which I love too, but comics is where my heart's at. So I just kind of uh, had a renewed vigor, and after doing a couple of videos with them and going through the random access and the Mutandis and stuff, I decided to restart the Mutandis. Restarted it with number one, which I really regret, because I wish I had continued it as a number five. But because I'm going to continue with the next one as a number six. Um, so then I produced that, and I was getting, you know, kind of on Instagram and Patreon. I was on Patreon, and I had the idea of offering a mini comic. So I just decided to restart Random Access as like this little 10-page mini comic or whatever. And so I started that with number three, because we had the first two out, and I still have a bunch of issues of that I sell. And so then I had a story that I had done called Symborgs previously. So I was just, you know, producing a monthly mini comic for my patrons, and it just grew from there.
Right. Okay. So a couple questions come up along the way, and mostly the the timing. So what year were you when you first started putting out Mutandis with
Uh,
your collaborators,
it's actually, I have
or
a,
or
a date.
roughly
It's
time?
92, 93.
Gotcha.
Mutandis number one.
So
The year.
at that point, it was the old distribution method where
Yeah,
there was
yeah,
comic retailers that were ordering
right, right.
out of a preview guide,
Yep,
and there was
yep, yep.
solicitations,
This was 93 was Mutandis. Yeah,
right?
we went through Diamond, and we also went through our local bookseller, and we also went to conventions and sold them and stuff. Um, we sold maybe 80 through Diamond. It wasn't very much.
Right. And was there a print run at that time? Because
Yeah, we printed 1,000 of Mutandis number one.
Right. Right.
You just had to,
Okay.
because if it was lower than that, then you would have had to charge, and it's not like today where you can charge, 5 or 8 or 10 bucks for a regular comic book. This was when you had to charge, $2.99, $1.99 or whatever, or people
Yeah.
just wouldn't buy it.
Right. Right. Yeah. The cover price was printed on it, and then the retailers, would get it for like about half that,
Right,
right?
right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it was 60/40.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. So great. Now the Kubert School. So you were relocating to attend school there?
Yeah, I went to New Jersey. Well, I didn't relocate, but I mean, moved to New Jersey for that year, and it was a fantastic experience. Probably the greatest. I can't say that. I mean, I've had some really great experiences, but it was one of the greatest experiences. Just being collaborating with all these other artists, and learning other arts and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a dream, but
Yeah,
it also sounds like a luxury. Like, imagine you're an adult and you're attending
yeah, yeah.
full time school to learn, comics and meet all these other
Right,
people.
right.
Right, and
It's definitely a luxury, but I guess it depends how serious you are on doing it. If this is just like a side thing that you're going to do once in a while, then not. But if this is what you want as a lifetime career, then it's kind of almost a necessity. I mean, I certainly wish that I had gone the full 3 years, and I mean, it's after the second and third year that you start networking and going to Marvel and DC and all of the other indie comics and stuff that can really
yeah,
get a job.
right. And what year was this that you were doing the
This
Kubert
was when
School?
I got right out of high school, so I was like, it was 91, 92.
Oh, right. So that was actually Joe Kubert himself, right?
Yeah, yeah. I remember specifically because I went down there for an interview with him, and he interviewed everybody at the time. And a few things really stuck out because I was really didn't want to do cartooning. I didn't want to do like a Saturday morning cartoon like
Yeah.
Garfield or whatever. And I told him that I was like, I want to be Mobius. I want to do the kind of stuff that Mobius does, and I don't want to
Right.
do Garfield. And he looks at
Right.
me very seriously and says, "I know Mobius, and I know what's his name,
Jim
Jim
Davis.
Davis. I know both of them." And Mobius says he wishes he was as good a cartoonist as Jim Davis. And I was like, well, I guess he knows.
Yeah, Joe Kubert, for those listening, is a very famous DC artist from decades of
Hmm.
professional work.
Yeah,
Opens up his new school in New Jersey,
yeah,
and it's kind of a unicorn because there's not too many schools of comic art,
hmm,
right? And that's kind of a shame, but they're still going. They're alive and well. It might be, I don't want to say a little expensive. It might be, really out of reach for the average person
hmm,
as far as tuition. But as a middle school teacher myself in New York City, um, I can say like a real problem that we have in education is that there isn't, programming so that kids in high school can learn this stuff because that's actually a better age to start. Um, there's one school in New York City called the High School of Art and Design
hmm,
that has a 3-year
hmm.
program. It's a CTE program, which means Career Technical Program, and it's called Cartooning and Sequential Art, and of course, that's the school that produced Neil Adams and
Hmm.
John Romita and Carmine Infantino and
Right.
Mark Teixeira and all those big names. So, we have spoken to some people in our interviews here that are in the field of teaching, but it's usually at the higher education level,
Right. Right.
and it's kind of a shame that the Kubert School doesn't just make a deal with some great high school
Right. Right.
and offer their programming to kids who would then audition in Maybe it's because they've always been in Jersey or
Right,
something. But
right,
if
right.
they were in the city, there's a lot of possibility. Anyway, just putting that out
Yeah.
there, not to get off, the beaten track too much.
No, no.
But you're, but
It's a great
you're,
topic.
yeah, no, and you're saying here that your time there was valuable, and the skills that you got there were actually something you were able to convert,
Oh
right,
yeah.
into marketable skills, right? So this is kind of a plug for what they're doing over there at
Hmm.
that school, but it's also not the model that we need right now. You got to catch kids earlier, I
Right.
think, and launch them, because you see how many people aren't able to finish, and that's probably
Hmm.
because of the tuition and life getting in the way.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Um, Kurt, you have any questions before I go to my next question?
Hold on. Let me just see if my questions are in the processing point. No, the only little thing I would like to ask Alex is when he said breaking into comics. Is that Marvel and DC? Would that have been the height of your
That's what I
career?
really wanted.
Okay.
That's what I really
Okay.
wanted. Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, so I gotta ask. Let's say everything went your way.
Yep.
What title would you try to get
Oh,
on?
X-Men. X-Men
Or
100%.
titles?
X-Men. That
That
answers my
that's
other question.
that's I
And,
mean, I love comic books, but X-Men is like, if I don't like X-Men, then I'm not into comic books. I mean, I don't
yeah.
know, that's hard to
Right.
say because there's a lot of different
No.
stuff that I like, and I follow artists and creators more than actual characters and titles and stuff. Um,
Mm.
but definitely X-Men is and Chris Claremont is, I mean, that's my heart and soul.
We keep having the same conversation with everybody we
Don't
interview.
tell the story. Do not,
Yeah.
Jake. Do not tell the story.
Yeah, I know.
I know I want to hear the story. I'm all about
Well,
stories.
when I was 12, I was working at a comic book store called Funny Business
Hmm.
on the Upper West Side, and I was getting exploited. I was working. I was working like a full
Right,
Saturday, or
right.
an 8-hour day,
As you should
and I
be.
would get
Yeah.
and I was getting in exchange. I got $30 worth of comics. That was my
And you
pay,
were loving it.
and I was happy. I mean, I would have done it for free.
Yeah.
But one day, a guy walks in, and he's looking at the racks, and he's like, "How are these selling?" And he's got an X-Men in his hand, and I was like, "Oh, that's number one." So for years, and he goes, "Oh, I was just interested because I take a professional interest because I write these." And then I
Uh,
recognized him. I don't know where. In those days you don't really see
yeah.
pictures of people,
Yeah.
right? But I jumped out from behind the counter, and I got on the floor, and I kissed his feet. I didn't actually, touch his feet with my lips, but
But you would have.
because but yeah, I was just like, doing the Wayne's World thing,
Yeah.
basically. And we also met a couple of other creators that used to walk in
Yeah.
every once in a while, and then the owner Raj would try to get them to sign stuff,
Right.
and
Right.
because he was just a greedy scumbag. But um that was the most incredible run. You go from Claremont
Yeah.
and Cockrum
Hmm.
to
Yeah.
Claremont, Byrne, and
Yeah.
Austin, and
Yeah.
it was just so professional, just a great model of, and it didn't look like cartoony.
Hmm.
It didn't look like shortcutty. Like, Jack Kirby always
Right.
had his great style, but
Right.
everybody knew he was like, cranking stuff
Yeah.
out like crazy. And the stories, the characters, you just got into it,
Hmm.
and you knew that, one day this would be movies and books
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
everything, and it
Yeah.
took a while.
Definitely.
But yeah, Marvel had all these properties that we really just fell in love with. In the '70s, I think for me was, also the greatest time. I always say any Marvel comic with 20 cents on it
Hmm.
is like,
Yeah.
is the grail for me.
Yeah.
But
Definitely.
um, you mentioned that once you started getting a little bit handy with your skills, that you advertised to try to make it sounds like a creator consortium, right? And it was loosely organized, and herding
You
cats
herding
kind of
cats. 100% herding cats.
kind of thing. We also heard the same from Matt King when we were interviewing him, that he got in with a bunch of loosely connected creators.
Hmm.
Everybody had their own kind of angle on it,
Hmm.
and that when that thing works, that's like
Yeah,
image,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
When
It's
that thing
gold when it
works.
works.
Yeah, so and probably you need some kind of like business person to hold it all together,
Hmm.
right? Instead of a bunch of guys that are like pencilers and inkers,
Right,
right?
right.
But the model is really just about meeting people, networking,
Hmm.
and then you find out what you can really pragmatically put out together.
Right.
So take us through now. When Mutanda starts coming out, that is coming out under the name of a company.
Yeah,
What's the
that was just
structure of?
ours. It was Parasite. That was just the three of us chipping in money and going to the printers and, sending it to Diamond and, doing all that stuff, trying to sell as many copies as we could. I mean, obviously, they were like, I think they cost $1 each. So we had the 250 price tag, and then Diamond takes 60%. So we made maybe 10 cents or something like that. Um, but then we would sell them at conventions, and like I said, we had a bunch left over, and then we kind of split them up and stuff. Yeah, so I mean, we never really had a publisher. We wish,
Yeah,
but
right. Because then they handle all the business
right,
stuff, and then like shipping,
you're
fulfilling, all
right,
that,
right,
all that drudgery work.
right.
But talk about the arrangement you guys had. Were you guys working off a handshake, or did
Yeah,
you
oh
like?
yeah, 100%. We didn't have any kind of uh, contracts or anything like that. It was just basically we do what we do, and if we actually did make a good amount of money, we would have had contracts and stuff. But I think none of us really thought that that would ever happen. We were just kind of having fun and hoping that it would further our careers or our agendas. I was really the only real comic book. Um, aficionado, I guess. Dave was really into comics and loved X-Men like I did. And you can kind of see a lot of influences that in Mutandis where nothing really happens. They just kind of, have some characterization and stuff, which is what Power Comics really focus on. They're like, man, nothing really happens in these issues. But I personally love
Like
that.
Seinfeld?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
like it's like the X-Men. I could just watch them, play baseball. I could just read them playing baseball or basketball or whatever. Um,
right.
but yeah, we were just, doing what we were doing and trying to keep doing it. Um, and then we just kind of fizzled out, I guess.
So, um, we usually try to do three segments. One is like getting to know you and your bio, and then
Hmm.
um the second one we've been hitting on kind of both of them at the same time
Yeah.
is
Right,
how you market yourself.
right, right.
Can I
The
jump in?
Yeah,
Jake,
go ahead,
Jake, let me,
Kurt.
yeah, because the big question for the promoting part, because I just have to say, if you're watching this video and you've gotten this far, you know who Alex Turbin is.
Right.
but the thing about it is, and I'm gonna make this statement, and I need you to correct it. But my
Okay.
feeling when it comes to you promoting is Random Access is a monthly book that
Yep.
comes out through Patreon,
Yep.
and your promotional megaphoning is through YouTube and Instagram. Is
Right.
that
Correct.
a good
Yeah.
assessment? And if
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
if that is, can you expand upon how that works for you and how you kind of came up with it?
Right. Well, we lost Jake. Um, yeah, I mean, I started the random access, or I restarted random access because of the Patreon, because Patreon is kind of an elusive thing for a lot of people, and they don't really can't
Yeah.
really wrap their heads around it. And because most Patreons are just you put the images up on the computer, and then people see them on their phone or whatever, and it's not, or you make YouTube videos, and people just try to help you by contributing to your Patreon. But I really wanted something solid. I mean, I really feel like if I was just putting it up on the computer, that I was ripping people off. I'm like 100% like Like as you notice, a lot of
Yeah.
the prices on my random access are like $1 or $1.50 or something like that. Um,
25. Yeah.
I'm really 100% into comics being for the average person, an art form for the average person. And I think for that to really take a hold, it has to be at a price point that they can afford and really enjoy. I think the fact that comic books, you can buy a comic book now for $5 and it's a regular size comic. I think that's one of the reasons why comics are kind of really losing a lot of the interest of a lot of people. Is just they're just
Agreed.
too much money. Like I used to go to the comic store and spend $20 and come back with 15 or 18 comics and go
Mm,
home and I was happy. You go to the comic store now and you $20 and you've got three.
yep.
It's just crazy. Um, but yeah, using random access in my Patreon, I was really trying to. It had several different aspects to it that I really wanted to do, which was I wanted to promote my comics through Patreon and Instagram and stuff. I also wanted to be able to promote other artists because I'm really all about that too. But also, I get it's only 10 pages or it's 12 pages now, but I get comic fatigue. If I'm doing like a 20-page comic halfway through, I'm like, oh man, nobody likes this. I hate this. It's the worst thing. So I just want to quit. So if I go my
Mm,
10 pages, that's about when the fatigue kicks in and I can just move on to another idea.
oh,
And that's
okay.
really what happens too is with the fatigue is I'll get another idea and then I need to
Mm,
go on to that. But
mm,
also random access and Patreon and Instagram, like it doesn't seem like it now, but I am a super shy person. Like I can't go to a comic book convention and be like, hey, here's my stuff, check it out, all that
mm,
stuff. I'm just not built like that. I can't, go into a comic book store cold and be like, hey, here's my stuff. Um, I'm just, I can't do that, which I think a lot of comic book people are like that. I did an episode where I thought I was trying to get into the psyche of comic book readers, and I got a kind of a lot of flack for it. I would say a lot, but a little bit, where I was like, a good majority of comic book readers and are kind of socially awkward and stuff. And I think some people didn't really like hearing that. But if we're honest
wow.
with ourselves, I think that's how it kind of is. But so yeah, random access just it has a lot of different fills a lot of different voids or things for me where I can just kind of put an anthology out there of my own stuff and other people's stuff, and also being the Patreon and doing the random access. Um, it encourages me to produce it on a deadline every month, which I really need. I can't because
Right.
there's so much time, many times where I'm like, I'm just going to go play video games and not, work on my comics or do something like that. And it really pushes me to come out with this on a deadline, and then I can have stuff like all of my random access stuff. I'm reprinting into my different books. Like I have Cyrene and Queller and stuff, and they're reprints of random access. So and I'm going to be doing that with the other creators that are doing stuff too. So basically, that's where I'm at.
Interesting. So you spoke a little bit about your what do I want to say, the workflow,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And you say you're producing prolifically, right?
hmm
Where you're really cranking out, at a regular pace.
right,
I mean, that's a necessity when you have a Patreon, right?
right,
Because you have to keep up.
yeah,
Um, but you're writing, right?
hmm
So this is where you come up with ideas, and then you say, you start working on it for a couple of pages, then you feel like you've reached you've exercised that idea,
right,
and then you want to start doing something new.
right.
So I mean, it should be evident from the books here, but where do you draw your inspirations and influences from when you're sitting down to plot out, or to script,
Right,
whatever you want to
right,
call it,
right,
scripting, plotting, writing,
right.
one of the stories before you start drawing?
I don't script anything. I just I think about it. I'm always thinking about my comics. Like I'll stay up nights I won't be able to sleep because I'm just reworking a comic. I'll be like, this idea works, this idea doesn't work. Oh, I can add this, I can take that away. So really, that's the scripting process in my head, and then I kind of write and draw visually, or write visually rather. So me doing my comics is almost a script in itself. Um, so there's a few other people that have done that. I think Mobius did that. I don't think he scripted. Um, but yeah, I don't really script that often. Every once in a while I have, and it just you know maybe I should. I noticed that I have a lot more detailed prose when I script something out. But really, I kind of like to let the images speak for themselves. Like I noticed that I have a kind of a clash in myself where I want really detailed scripts. Like I love Alan Moore. Alan Moore is my favorite writer, comic book or otherwise. And like the scripts that you see him write are just crazy. There's so much detail, but it's also kind of um, like if you have to say what is already on the panel, then I kind of think that that's a fail because you shouldn't have to say like guy lying down. If you can't see that a guy's lying down and you have to have it written, then it doesn't work. But at the same
Yeah.
time, it certainly can add a certain amount of complexity to the story. So
Yeah, well, that might be like a uniquely American thing,
uh,
you know. I mean, we have these like ball games, and you have an announcer telling
yeah,
you what you can plainly see,
right,
you know.
right.
He's like, he flied out to left field. I know, and a picture is showing it.
Right.
But when you compare it to like British media or European stuff. It's like in America, you have to tell somebody what's going to
Hmm.
happen, and then show them that it happens,
Hmm.
and then after it happened, tell them what they just saw.
Right, right.
Again, because you need like 6 times before
Hmm.
anybody like retains
Right,
anything, right?
right. It
Um,
it's a fine line
yeah.
between talking down to your audience and trying to talk up to them.
Right, right,
Yeah.
and it's good. It's good to think about that kind of stuff because you can kind of control the level of
Hmm.
that, right? Like how clarity
Hmm.
and
Exactly.
you know because there's some stuff that you just want to stick with
Hmm.
people, and
Right.
it might be like, all right, this is just happening here and it's not a big deal, but this is like important that somebody needs to really emphasize, and that's the art, I guess, of storytelling.
Hmm.
But have you worked ever with a full script in your hand from somebody
Well,
and
Mutandis was all scripted. Dave did the scripting. But there again, it's hard to have another person who hasn't drawn comics scripting it, especially like you guys work together, right? Um, Jake,
Mhm.
you're the
Yep.
writer for Turbo.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and then, I mean, because you have the old Marvel way where the writer and the artist would just talk about stuff, and then the artist would go and do everything, and then the scripter would script stuff. Like old Marvel books, yeah, they're great, but Stan Lee, I still don't think is a great writer, and like he just kind of, I don't know, we're gonna get a lot of flack for that. But it's just kind of silly stuff how he writes, and yet Jack Kirby does all of the stuff. So I mean,
Yeah, well, Stanley was. I mean, they knew that Jack Kirby was a golden goose.
right, right,
That would that turn anything into just magic. Especially those early years when he was getting all those franchises off the
right,
ground and like hit after hit after hit.
right.
And the funny thing that we have been realizing in this podcast where we covered, at the beginning we were talking a lot about Stan and Jack, is that a lot of the stuff that was happening at Marvel in the early days was really just marketing decisions,
Hmm.
and it was funny, if you just trace everything, it all comes back to like a marketing decision. That I think the She-Hulk is probably the biggest example of that. She was only created to block CBS from creating a female Hulk character
Right,
because
right.
they had the license to do that if they wanted to,
Yeah.
and Stanley realized that. So now here's a character that's been produced for like 30, 40 years now. And it was only for that reason,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And same thing with Captain America. They brought it back. It was a golden age creation of Jack Kirby and his partner Joe Simon.
Right.
They said, let's bring this back, and Jack Kirby gets like $5,000 or something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
um, all business decisions.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the stuff and pretty much everything with Marvel is like that. Master of Kung Fu. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, there's a lot of kung fu movies out right now.
Yeah.
This is a fad that we need to jump on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all the companies did something like that.
Yeah.
Jake,
Um, yeah, go ahead.
I want to head into the future of comics segment because I'm really interested in hearing Alex not only outlook but maybe wish list. So how do you see comics? I think maybe at this particular point, and where would you like to see it go?
Um, I would, I would, my ideal world would be to go back for the big two or image or whatever to be like, hey, we can produce comics cheaply because they make these comics for $5, but why not make it a newsprint books again?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
People love newsprint. I've been trying to print
yes,
newsprint in my books, but it jams up in my printer and stuff like that.
right,
But newsprint
Yeah.
is like a constant a roll, like a giant roll at the newspaper or whatever. So it's not like it's printed on a digital printer, which I think most comics are printed on a digital copier now.
Yeah.
Um, but just to go back to newsprint and it doesn't have to. It could even be black and white or the color separation of the old days. Even if it was $2. Or it doesn't. It just doesn't have to be
yeah,
super expensive. That's how comics started. That's how the old books, the pulps started. They wanted cheap cheap entertainment for the masses, and I really think that if they came out with like they just relaunched X-Men #1, and I am hearing that it's okay, whatever. I don't think the sales are huge, but if they relaunched it and it was newsprint, $2, I think it sells a million copies or over.
great point,
Um,
great point.
so I
Yeah, well, they do that. That's what they're doing in Japan.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's kind of what they do with. It's like Random Access, only they do the trades and the big books, and then they break it down into smaller things. But I mean, that would be my ideal life, where I could still go to the comic book store every Wednesday and pick up 20 books or 15 books for $20. But I don't really think that's going to happen. They say Kickstarter is the biggest publisher of comics now. I really don't love that.
Yeah,
I notice you guys aren't doing Kickstarter with Chrome, which I was kind of wondering about why not. Um, and I mean, I did a Kickstarter, and it is a nice resource. But then you also have like people that are really famous and don't need Kickstarter doing it, and it's like why do that if you don't need to? I
right,
think Kickstarter should totally be for indie people that
Yeah, because
really need it.
those guys are blowing the indie people out of the water,
Right,
right?
right,
yeah,
right.
right.
So why do it? So I mean, it's hard to say because I mean I do really like webtoons. I love the platform that they have. It's really horrible that it's all Korean romance vampire stuff. Um, and I would love
Yeah,
to be able to read a new Frank Miller comic on there scrolling on my phone. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's so hard to say. I mean, digital comics, they're here. I don't think, um, because like I really don't think people read the digital comics the way that I think a lot of people should or would like to. The publishers would like them to. I People still like the tactile comics in their hand. So that is a super hard thing to say because it's a bygone age, and something really
yeah,
has to change in order for people to get the stuff that they really enjoy.
yeah. I mean, I think that's going to happen with with the older guys, older people dying off,
Yeah,
and younger people taking their place. I think it's inevitable.
yeah,
But paper won't go away, too. So it'll just be, it might be, it might become a little more cultish,
Mhm.
or I'm sure just, the numbers will change, but the digital, it's got to, because it's just a much more convenient and cheaper way of delivering
Yeah,
the
yeah.
same content. And for people that are of a certain age, you might not know, when you talk about pulps, usually you think about like a type of a story, or maybe like an era of adventures and serial, like kind of like melodrama.
Mhm.
The word pulp actually comes from the paper.
Right, right.
It was cheap
Yeah,
paper, and that's why they were called the pulps, and people should not forget that,
yeah.
because it is possible to go back to that, and they definitely do that in Japan, where there's a weekly gigantic tome coming
Mhm.
out that is, very, very cheap paper. And, people are just flipping through it on buses and trains, and just leaving them there, like in these big ashtrays, for other people to just, read when they're done.
Mhm.
And then, the eventual comic comes out, when it's all collected.
Mhm.
Jake,
It is a format that we could be doing here. What's up?
I would like to ask the when Alex you were saying about webtoons and scrolling
Yeah.
and having a Frank Miller comic there.
Mhm.
What do you think? Because I have a feeling you're going to in a couple of years because of AI.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
is your your viewpoint on AI and this
Oh,
introduction of computers manipulating images in order to refabricate them into newer content?
it's the most horrible thing in the whole entire world. I always thought that art and comics would be safe from automation and robots and
Right,
computer
right.
stuff, and then this AI thing comes up, and I'm like, Are you joking? Like it's it would be one thing if like I've thought about you have your own work and you have a program and you have scanner and you scan in all your own work and then you create stuff like that, then it's your own work. But the fact that they're going on the internet and stealing images and without any kind of thought of giving you any kind of credit or monetary
Compensation.
compensation or
Yeah.
anything, it's just crazy. Like how can they do that? And I mean, I know that you post on Instagram, so it's their platform, and you take your chances, and that is what it is. But it's a double-edged sword because you have to promote yourself in order to get recognition, which they're going to steal from you. So I mean, that's the most horrible thing in the whole entire universe as far as I'm concerned. And it's going to finally, I think they'll finally have. I mean, there's litigation going on now, but it's going to take like Disney is going to have to be stolen from, or Nintendo. Nintendo's a great one because if you steal from Nintendo, they shackle you in chains. But it's going to take a big company to be stolen from, that they're like, hey, wait a minute, I can steal from you, but you can't steal from me. So then that's going to finally resolve there in some way, I think. I know the Actors Guild just did they had their strike, and a lot of their and the writers, a lot of their contention is AI. The video game writers are talking about their AI and their strike now too. So I think I mean, it has to be solved, and it can't be stealing people's artwork. That just can't happen.
It's a good point. The because it does spill. It's not just comics. Obviously, it
Hmm.
spills all over into all kinds of art, all kinds of music. Movies, everything. The writer's strike was ended, and there was a new contract.
Hmm.
But the AI part of it was horrible.
Yeah,
It turns out.
yeah.
They can scan, a real live person,
Hmm.
and they can use their face in an amalgamation
Hmm.
as much as they want. And
Right,
so I don't know what we were all on strike for,
right,
but
right,
um, I mean, I guess at some point people had to eat, and there was an impasse
right.
that they weren't going to solve. Um, a big question though is, future generations,
Hmm.
because Kurt and I talk a lot, because he does the Crom, which is a public domain
Hmm.
character. So we talk a lot about, 50 years from now, when we're all gone,
Hmm.
and there's other people out there, and you're going to be able to, use other people's characters,
Hmm.
freely anyway,
Right.
right? There's not gonna be anything stopping it. So the question is like, is there any way to kind of shape and control that
Right.
so
Right.
that you put your best foot forward?
Hmm.
I mean, the best thing to do is have kids that are into the industry,
Hmm.
right? Right? And that goes with anything, right?
Right.
Like how many laundromats, have been there, or pharmacies that have been there for like 30, 40 years, and then when the person dies, their kids are not interested because they're all, they're like, a medical technician in Seattle, and they don't have any interest in running like, a delicatessen or whatever.
Right. Right.
So that's the best thing, like, and that's why you look at somebody like, Alice Cooper. His daughter is his guitar player now, and so she's going to keep his whole,
Yeah.
franchise
Yeah.
going, for a whole other generation. And you could talk about Metallica and Kiss and people like that really, really try to enforce their copyrights, and they really go
Hmm.
after people
Right.
aggressively. They have a lot more success, obviously, than other people who are just like laying back and, oh, I don't know if this is, fan art
Right.
or
Right.
sanctioned.
Right.
There's such a gray area, and
Right.
then
Right.
YouTube doesn't know what to leave up and put off and take down.
Hmm.
So, I mean, Kurt's question to you was really just like, what would you like to see? But the things that are going to happen,
Hmm.
I mean, there is a lot of inevitability
Right,
there.
right. One of the
You know,
things that, because I debate about this all the time, I can't help it. I'm one of those people that if I see something on Instagram or whatever, I have to respond. And then, so then you have these pro AI people, and they'll be saying, they'll say something like, that's not how it works. It doesn't just scrape the images, it learns. And I'm like, it's not, AI is artificial intelligence. It's not artificial aliveness. It doesn't learn. It's not a person. It's a computer that takes the images, without any kind of compensation. It's not learning to reform these images into different things.
Yeah, well, I
right?
think the biggest thing that people have well, the media is doing the greatest disservice to the general public, and then when it gets into the artist's hands, that are pro. The first thing is, and this is a fact, it is not intelligent. The the
Right.
prob the problem is that they use that to make it hyperbolic and
Hmm.
newsworthy. The thing
Yeah.
is it's a sequencing of events that has to understand things only by its negatives. In other words, the
Right.
things that you say, that's not what I asked it to do, and so on and so forth. But I think the really interesting point, I have a nephew who's involved, and my father is a chemist, biologist, computer nerdy geek as well. And
Hmm.
tonight I'll be going over to the house and having those intense conversations that mom wants us to stop talking because you're yelling at each other. But
Mhm.
but the thing about it is we can all agree on this. So artists to scientists, these machines will never in our lifetime be autonomous to be free thinking and intelligent. They will
Right.
always need our input. And here's
Right.
the key: the input is not the positive, it's
Hmm.
the negative. It needs to tell you need to tell it that's incorrect. And for every one positive, you need a million negatives to get
Right.
that positive. And
Right.
so the happy rainbow on at the end of the AI story for creatives, because I am intensely interested in it, because my nephew who's a LLM, language learning, large language learning model,
Hmm.
he's about ready to leave school and go off and probably make billions. He loves comic books. So he's
Hmm.
always like, Uncle Kurt, look what I drew. Look at the characters, these kinds of
Right.
things.
Right.
So it's interesting to see how he, at well, he's 21. So how he will navigate, because the thing he says to me, we had lunch a few months back, and I was asking about his comics and his art, and it was kind of like a professional question, like how do you want to see this come about, and like that. And he
Right.
just stopped. He stared at me. He goes, "I want nothing professionally to do with my art. I want my
Huh.
art to be my safe place."
That's a good answer.
And so he went to his first comic book convention, and so I saw him there, and so we're talking and talking and talking, and I said, "Well, how were some of the friends you finally met online, and what's their take on AI and technology?" Oh, we all think the same thing, Kurt. And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Well, we're not trying to do this as a profession. We're doing this because we're friends and we love the
Hmm.
comics and like that. And I'm like, wow. So the younger generation, I feel already at this point, and this is obviously just one nephew at 21,
Right.
but they're going to have just as many, if not more, challenges to be creative in the world, professionally speaking.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like a Star Trek where they don't actually have to work because they can have anything made that they want. They do whatever they want because
Yeah.
it's fulfilling, you know.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I mean, I know what you
Imagine
mean
that.
by being interested in AI and robots and stuff because I mean, as a geek, I think we all are like, this is an awesome potential, has awesome stuff, but we also know it could come to an Armageddon kind of thing, and that also interests us. So it's a hard thing. It's just I think
Mm.
that realizing that it could be a detriment in the short term where you're being stolen from and you're going to lose recognition is probably the biggest hurdle.
Right. Well, they say that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery,
Right.
but theft is
Theft is done.
I don't know what theft. I mean, and it's funny because when I first started hearing about Kurt was experimenting a little bit, just to see what these tools do. And the big question is, wow, can I make a sketch and then just hit a Frazetta filter?
Right.
You know,
Right.
and that's what everybody was trying to do. So I mean, it might be, now the Frazetta franchise is run by the
Mm.
daughters, and they have this pretty healthy YouTube channel,
Yeah.
and they're coming out with all these comics, right? So they seem like they're actively trying to build upon their dad's legacy. They should put it out official, so this way they can control it.
Yeah.
This way they can, because they can say, no, we're not going to be doing that, we're not going to be doing that, we're not going to be doing that, but yes, this is okay, this is okay. Because I mean, they're basically doing it in real life. They're like, all right, let's try to find some people that can draw like my dad,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
or my grandfather. These are actually the grandkids I think we're working with here.
Right. Right.
um and but it's like it's going to be like that for every household name artist. You're going to have a Warhol button, and then you're going to have a Lichtenstein button, and you're going to have a Picasso button, and you're just going to say, you take a picture of yourself, and you're just going to, how like in Instagram you have all these filters,
Yeah. Yeah.
like X-ray and Bruto and all that.
Yeah.
So it's, I mean, it just seems so inevitable, because there's so many loopholes, right? You can say, all right, you can't use this artwork,
Uh-huh.
but you can't tell somebody not to use that style. I mean, I'm an art teacher. We teach kids, okay, today we're going to be making a artwork in the style of Van Gogh,
Right.
and we're going to use blobs, like paint that is going to be like dabs of paint
Hmm.
in a style, and you put your own spin on it. But we want kids to say, well, this guy was a genius, and and you can like use his technique and figure out what you want to do.
Hmm.
But the problem is like, how many people are out there saying, hey, Van Gogh is a pretty good artist, I'm going to sell some of his prints on Etsy
Right.
and
Yeah.
charge for it.
Yep.
So there's a lot of human nature involved, and I just keep thinking, like, yeah, we can control a certain amount of things while we're alive, and then it's just going to be out of our hands unless we leave behind our own algorithms and our
Right.
own, do's and
Yep.
don'ts. And by the way, as a sci-fi writer, I can tell you that there is something called AL, and it's already out, artificial life, and it's happening, and they're doing it in a petri jar, and
Right.
it's really fascinating and scary at the same time, because I can tell you all about it. They can take your cells right now and make an organ for you
Hmm.
in a lab that they can then test out to see what your reaction for certain drugs are. And they're doing this now already. So imagine, 20 years from now or 30 years from
Yep.
now.
Yep.
So, it's always interesting conversations to
Yeah.
have, to try to figure out what's going to happen in the future.
Jake.
But,
Yeah.
but we're here now. What's up, Kurt?
All right, so let's tie this off. So this is the Indie uh, Creator Exchange. So you got a copy of our Turbo Pit Fighter,
Yep. Yep.
Alex. All right, you
That's
got it
downstairs.
nearby. So
No,
this is where
it's
you.
downstairs
Oh,
actually.
You
it's
don't need to flip through it.
yeah, yeah. I
Kurt,
have
Kurt
I
has.
have I
But
have the copy, but
I got your Crom though here with me.
thank you very much. Thank you too.
Thank you.
But for um, the exchange, this is where we're learning just as much as anybody else out there in the indie
Right.
community. And for Jake and I, the reason we wanted to start this exchange is that we would see somebody like yourself, talking on a platform like Instagram or YouTube, and you think, oh wow, it would be really interesting to get Alex's take on Turbo Pit Fighter.
Right.
So
Right.
that was the whole thing. So this is where we say, let us have it. If you have questions or critiques
Oh,
or,
I wish
like,
I had it now. I love it. I mean, I obviously love it. I love the detail art and
thank you.
and the story. And I mean, it's fantastic, and I can't wait to review it on my channel. Um, but the only thing is, like, it's a review like it's
Teaser.
how yeah, it's a teaser.
Preview, yeah.
When do you think it will be done?
Jake.
Um, Not anytime soon. We work every Sunday. We tape an edition of Turbo Pit Fighter,
Right.
where Kurt is doing the inks on one side and I'm doing the pencils on the other side,
Yeah.
and we talk about the story. And I try to do like about a half a page in an episode,
Right.
maybe one page an episode. Sometimes I just try to finish it up after we're done taping, but it's very slow
Yeah. Yeah.
because we kind of like I mean, Kurt, he's working at a decent pace. He's doing all the toning, right? He first is inking, then he's doing all the grays,
Right.
and
Right.
then we have to do the lettering, and then we have to do, there's copy editing that
Hmm.
goes in,
Oh,
and
I know that.
so it's a torturously slow process,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
why we put out the teaser. We're on the second teaser now, so it's 12 pages that are pretty much done. And so if you just multiply that pace, it took us 2 years to get a 12-page teaser out.
Right.
Um, and so for us the real value for people is like just kind of like the education,
Hmm.
and like work along with us,
Yep.
put us on the background, if you're drawing or if you're exercising or doing something, so
Right.
it's really not about like watching us draw, because that's very slow. But it's also just the networking that we're doing, meeting people,
Hmm.
talking about
Right.
distribution and everything.
Right.
Should we do a Kickstarter? Should we not do a Kickstarter?
Right. Right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, the book is almost halfway there right now, and we do go a little bit faster in the summer because I'm a full-time teacher,
Hmm.
and a little bit slower during the regular year.
Right.
But that's just our regular pace. We have other projects that we're doing, besides that. So we're it's not like we're just working on that one
Right.
thing.
Right.
Obviously Kurt has a pretty substantial Crom publication out now.
Hmm.
I have something that I do with my young students. It's called Pearl White Malady. I have four issues that are in various stages of completion. The first issue is about to be published in a couple of months.
Hmm.
Um, and that's something where I just kind of like plot it as I draw,
Hmm.
and like kind of what you do. But Turbo's really, really thought out, and so we go from thumbnails to roughs to to blue pencil to regular pencil
Hmm.
to inks to tones, and so that's why it is so slow. And we get the same feedback from everybody. It's like, when is this thing going to be a whole book that I can
Right.
hold in my
Right.
hand? And
But
so
here's a question. This is a
yeah,
question for Alex. One of the things that mystifies Jake and I is we feel like we're the only ones doing this. So,
Yeah.
the severity in truth is both of us have other jobs and life outside.
Yep.
So to be
Yep.
totally devoted to your comic book passion is not realistic for the two of us.
it's a
But
luxury.
Right.
but we're also heading towards retirement in 10 years or so.
Ugh.
So if this is still going, this will all be a great platform. But we don't see anybody else out there doing it. So
Right.
even somebody like yourself, Alex, have you ever thought of, because you do, by the way, you collaborate with some really great guys out there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also I gotta push the Crom that you're in with
Yeah.
just Jamie and them
Yep.
for the
Jamie
brutal
Barrows.
blade.
Yep.
Yeah, the brutal blade of Crom, and you have these guys in here, like Machete is in here
Yep.
with his character. Have you ever thought of like splitting the duties on something and doing a side by side work podcast, or is there some
Uh,
trepidation, or do you see conflict, or
the only thing that I think, I guess I hadn't thought about it, but I mean, it's a fantastic way that you guys are doing this, where you're working on it, and people you go progress with you as you're working on it, and you're building the following on YouTube, and that's really fantastic. But I've always been the thought process that is that like you have your product and it's done, and then you have like this big media push or promotional push for like a month or so before it comes out, and then you sell it, and because really there's a certain amount of lifespan of the excitement for a project,
yes,
and then it kind of fades away, and then until your next project or whatever. So that's really would be my only concern. But if you guys can continue this and uh, I don't know, not make a living, but make some money, or the way you're doing it is really fantastic, because you have a good amount of subscribers and you have a good amount of viewers and stuff, and that's another great way to do it. So yeah, I mean, I would definitely think about doing something like that. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, Kurt always tries to drive home that it isn't about any one particular product when you're trying to get your fan base or your subscriber base, or even people that just have passing interest,
Hmm.
to check back regularly.
Yeah. Yeah.
um so yeah, so there's a lot of possibilities, and Patreon is something that we haven't done either, but
Yeah.
we have launched, in if you see the back 2 pages of the teaser, now we did launch a Substack.
Hmm.
And this is where we're going to be, putting out installments of illustrations with writing, that give the backstory of the Turbo world and all these prequels.
Right.
So that might be something, like if somebody's looking for more material on a regular
Yeah.
basis. But the problem is, like, full sequential pages.
Hmm.
That would be something that we'd have to, really get into collaborations with other artists on,
Right. Right.
and we do have all these subplots and these different stories. I have these bullet points in the back that are like all these, categories of the story, about how the world, goes to shit,
Hmm.
and everything gets blown up, and radioactive poison in the sky, and then what happens after that. But it's I think it will eventually. I think we'll be finding eventually an artist who wants to make a deal where they're getting the writing for free,
Hmm.
right, Kurt? That's the idea.
we have a concept that I'm earmarking as a free comic book script. So it
Right.
gives somebody trying to enter the profession, indie comics specifically, the
Right.
ability to play with something that not only in the script has a formalized professionalism to it, but obviously there's a world that you can lean into because we have all these
Right.
videos and you can get a copy of this and everything. So we're getting
Right.
to that point because we're at 2.5 years of doing this. And
Yeah.
as Jake, to lean also towards Jake, it's something that I feel once again with my Crom project, and even the product. I don't want ownership of the character. I don't. That's
Right.
why I
Right.
chose Crom. Because
Yeah.
I do believe there are these safeguards that eliminate the possibilities between indie creators, which is we're in an industry that is probably somewhere around 15,000 strong in the United States. And when I say that,
Yeah.
I'm talking about people who put cash down all
Right.
the time.
Right.
You have European, like I get orders from a lot of my other orders outside of this country for Crom is Australia.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so there's a whole thing. That's also why I use the print on demand. But this is about Turbo and random access. But the whole idea is I just love the process. I
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
getting things completed. And I'm going to piggyback on what you were saying earlier, which is you got to get something together, then you've got to put it out in a marketing way and then
Hmm.
sting them, try to grab as much cash and then go back to it. But I
Right.
even will state the month to month grind is not healthy for a comic book. I think because I'm going to do a follow up with Crom that is going to be called the Crom Anthology, which will be very much the same format, bringing in a lot more content as back matter. But I'll tell
Right.
you, straight up honesty wise, it's going to probably take me till the end of the year to even get something in the way of thinking of releasing it.
Yeah.
And I will
Yeah.
do the same thing, which is my can Crom sell?
Right.
I think
Right.
the 100 copies without
Right.
Kickstarter. And the
Yeah.
reason
Yeah.
I say without Kickstarter is because I want everybody to go to Crom the Barbarian.
Right.
I don't
Right.
want them. I don't. I'm tired of. And this is my rant, just so everybody can speak for the next 3 minutes. This is my rant about Patreon, Instagram, and Kickstarter. They own your work.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no getting around it. You can
Yeah.
argue all you want, you can hire attorneys, you can get collaborated together. But when I say own the work, it's when somebody Googles Alex Turbin random access,
Hmm.
you got your website, which by the way is a great thing, but your Instagram, your Patreon comes up, and
Yeah.
those are
Yeah.
now choices to be able to click. When you do
Yeah.
Crom the Barbarian, there's a lot more coming up Crom the Barbarian than
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
platforms. And the Instagram and the Patreon is my biggest concern with artists because Patreon and Apple Pay just had that big flub it. Did you get
Right.
affected by the Apple Pay flub it?
No. No.
Okay. All right. So that means you don't have people paying with Apple Pay. But just so
Right.
everybody knows, Apple Pay just changed that there's a 30% surcharge on purchases made with
Huh.
that app. And so
Right.
if you're using Apple Pay to get, a $3 subscription from Patreon, 30% of it, not including the processing fee for Patreon, goes to Apple.
Yeah. Yeah.
And isn't this in the wake of the whole 30% app thing with what's the name of that game that all the kids play? It's
Uh,
it's
cube
not
something or
no,
no,
it's
no,
not it's not Minecraft.
no,
It's
no. I know. It's the shooter.
and
That
it's
shooter there.
yeah, it's one of the biggest
Yeah. We got old
one of the
man
yeah.
brains, I guess. Yeah, I know. I know exactly
It's
what
too
you're
much.
talking about.
Oh, this is going to be a
So
blooper reel right
they,
here.
well no
Because of the
there's a
F.
lawsuit. There's, there's a lawsuit where they want people to be able to download their app on the App Store and they
Oh,
say
right.
that
Yeah.
Apple taking
Yeah.
30% is cutting into their ability to generate sales, and it is kind of a generic complaint, but it takes one big actor to say I'm going to pull my stuff and we're going to go to court,
Yeah.
you know because these guys are literally, in the in the crosshairs of the Federal Trade Commission, for monopolistic practices.
Right.
When
Apple.
Google and
You're talking about
Apple
Apple.
and Microsoft, yeah, the Google Play and
Yeah.
the Microsoft, like when they kind of like bundle the browser with the links,
Yeah.
they get
Yeah.
an unfair competitive advantage.
Jake,
And yeah.
just to move us back to finishing up the episode, because I just have to say, Alex, this has been a great interview, and
Yeah. It's
we're
been
gonna get
fun.
you back on, but we want you to close out. So if you do have any other questions about what we're doing, Patreon on Turbo Pit Fighter, but even other than that, you can give us where you're at and what you're doing, because we will do this again with you.
Okay, cool. The turbo it's an interesting concept of way to do it. I don't think it's for me because as I do the monthly random access, my main focus on comics is the story and the uh, the plot and all that stuff. So I kind of like I, I can't remember how you said the uh, the episode that you were reviewing random access. You had some name for having so many ideas that you have to get out there. Um,
Flood the zone.
the
Yeah, flood the
zone.
zone.
Yeah,
Flood the zone. Yeah.
flood zone. Yeah, that really is 100% me because I really need to get all of these ideas out of my brain and onto the page, kind of not as fast as I can, but a combination of as fast as I can and as good as I can, and as efficiently as I can, because I really need to get it going. And one of my biggest thoughts on doing comics is the engagement between the writer or creator of the comic and the reader of the comic, and having some sort of emotional connection with between the two. Like we were talking about Chris Claremont, that was one of the biggest things that I really try to emulate and want to do in my comics is have that emotional connection with the reader. And to really do that, I feel like I have to move the story along as a good a pace as I can, um, to kind of get all of my ideas out there.
Yeah, flood the zone is great, and nowadays you can just have like a little square that has a character or a story title or whatever, and you could just say coming soon, right?
Right.
But it's like a real reminder to people that you have this idea. It's in development,
Hmm.
right? And that's what Martin Goodman used to do. He was the guy that gave Stan Lee his break. The owner of Marvel, and he used to just flood the zone, right? He would
Right.
just like come out with everything all the time, see what sticks against the wall,
Hmm.
and then concentrate there. But you just crank stuff out.
Right. Right.
Just put it out and see.
Yeah.
The audience will let you know, hey, that's an interesting idea. Can I hear more of that?
Right. Right.
You know, and so, it's I love that idea because it means, that you're a wellspring of material that's, forthcoming,
Right.
as soon as
Right.
I get the chance to do it, but I need your support,
Right.
right? It's that
Right.
kind of a connection that you're trying to build.
So
And like you're also
Alex, yeah, go
it's
ahead. No,
like you're
finish.
also saying where you only have a certain amount of time because you have other jobs and family and stuff like that too.
Correct. Correct. Correct.
Yeah, yeah. And fans understand that,
Yeah.
right? There's only going to be certain
Attention
amount of stuff that you
span.
could put out.
Attention
Attention
span
span.
doesn't. Yeah,
Yeah.
attention span
Yeah.
doesn't. But this is. I have already wrote a half a dozen other questions for the next
Yeah.
time we get together with Alex, because
Awesome.
this is a really great beginning, an intro, if
Yeah.
you will. But Alex, before I close us out, please tell us where to find you, how to find you, and all that good stuff, please.
I'm on Patreon at Patreon /Alex Turbin. And I have my monthly random access. And I also have a YouTube video where I review comics. And I try to do, because I noticed that there's a little bit less views on my indie stuff and a little bit more views on
Right.
the modern
Right.
stuff. And one of the reasons I started the show after the kayfabe or during the kayfabe or whatever was like I had sent them a comment or whatever that I love the cartoonist kayfabe show, and I love the that they go and look at stuff, but they kept going over these Frank Miller image stuff,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
they kept going over the same old stuff, and there's like thousands and thousands and thousands of fantastic indie comics that nobody has any kind of idea of what's going on. And one of the great things about like I reviewed Grips, and the original artist from
yeah.
Grips got in contact with the show, and they were talking about stuff. Bloodwing, the original artist from Bloodwing, commented on stuff. So all of these artists from the 80s and 90s that were doing indie stuff, they're interested in doing more stuff and kind of getting their story out there. So that's cool. Um, and just
You're
Instagram.
providing a service. You're
That's
providing a service that could, conceivably expose people to, these projects
yeah,
for years to come.
yeah.
For
That's what I'm
years to
hoping.
come.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
hoping. And
Cool.
yeah, you can also contact me at AlexTurbin0441 at Instagram. I'm always happy to talk to anybody on Instagram.
Nice,
Right
nice.
on.
So all these links are below, so you'll be able to
Awesome.
get to Alex that way. And as I just said, I'm already looking at the calendar, and hopefully we can do this before Christmas. But um, excuse me, this is the Indie Creator Exchange, and that's exactly what you experienced. And thanks for excuse me, I got a little bit. But the idea comics, and then we talk about comics and learn from each other. And I have, like I said, a half a dozen notes over here that are
Yeah,
just absolutely amazing, Alex. And we wish you the best. And obviously, we'll be in contact and watching each other.
yeah. I
And
watch you guys all the time now.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So you guys are great.
Cool.
So yeah, so we're gonna say good day, and you just hang tight because we're gonna do an after show,
Okay.
Alex. But Jake, do you got anything for these good people? Since we're gonna let them go, get back to reading comics, making them if they choose.
Yeah, just one last thing. People should look up earlier in our feed and find the episode where we flip through random access and with Dan Snoke,
3 Men
and
in a Comic.
and
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
That's a
and
great show.
this episode we really didn't get too much into the page by page content, and in that episode we were just kind of like speculating
Hmm.
all about Alex and just trying to look at it and figure it out. So that's what Dan's great for, is just like these real, just spontaneous reaction takes. And so everyone should look up that episode. You can dig a little bit more deeper into the stories as readers, and check that out on our feed, which is called 3 Men in a Comic, the episode with Alex Turbin.
Awesome. All right, Alex. Once again, thank you very much. Hold
My
tight for the
pleasure.
after show, and everybody, thank you, and we'll see you again.